Welcome back to the Parts Avatar podcast called Parts and Pistons. We are here for episode 10. We've done this for, we're into double digits, like Tony likes to say.
Finally, we
did it. And I think this week we're back down to just me and Tony. We've had a plethora of cool guests. I don't think we can rate which one's our favorite, but...
I don't have a favorite. They've all been good and they've all been interesting in their own ways. Like we had Greg with his all road, and I didn't even know about all roads, and I found that out. Check that episode out. That was the last one. And then we had
Tony went outside, saw the all road, and was like,
I was like, oh my gosh,
yeah,
I gotta get that.
Yeah. and the thing is, Tony doesn't own the most reliable Audi in the world, right? Because the most reliable one I would say would probably be like a 2-liter non-turbo B6. Or a TDI, but he has like a somewhat reliable one. And then he sees the most unreliable Audi, and he's like, I want you.
Oh, yeah.
So that was kind of funny to me.
That's like people look at exotics and they're like, oh my God, I want that car so bad. And then I go outside and I look at a falling apart Audi, or actually his Audi was good, but I look at a falling apart Honda with the exhaust on the floor and just nice wheels. I'm like, that right there, you know that meme where it's like where it's like
the guy walking with the girl and like looking back.
Not even that. I'm talking about the one where it's like what, I don't even remember. I'll find it. I'll post it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, the Drake one.
Which one?
And then
yeah.
The Drake meme.
One. Yeah.
The Drake meme. Yeah. The Drake meme. That's what we're going for. Okay. Yes.
Like reliable supercar. No, I want the one that's falling apart.
Yeah, that's the meme we're going for.
Yeah.
We had Dane, which was great for raps. We had Coast to Coast Cutest, Nick. Who else have we had? I think was that it.
We had
so
Alex
far?
Pona as well.
We had Pona with the TDI swap Jeep.
TDI swap, yeah.
And we're gonna have him definitely back to talk about other adventures. But you know what? We didn't even get into like the depth of off-roading with
we
with
really
Mr. Pona.
didn't. No. But we got to see some of the results with Greg's Audi Allroad.
Yes.
Man, I could not believe he sent me like 40 pictures of just him trailering different things.
I know.
I was like, oh my gosh. But he's got a trailer, a thing full of wood, a car, bikes.
Yeah.
Like, geez, trailers everything. When he said it on the podcast, I was like, oh, okay, cool. But then I didn't see the scope of it until I saw the pictures he sent me, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, that's insane."
He trailers a lot of things, so he's very like Polish in that way. He's like, just buy a trailer and do it yourself, and that's what he does.
Yeah.
So kudos to Greg for that. Greg was a great storyteller too, which I liked. Like he kept you in suspense with the whole like up the hill, up the hill. Like he knew how to tell a story, which was very good. And also big shout out to Greg because he's watched every single one of our podcasts. So he was a fan, and he became a guest on the podcast. So Greg, we love you. Thank you for being not only a supporter but on our podcast. So
yeah.
On the topic of Ponas, I think today's topic, I want to kind of go over why you should buy a Miata and why I bought my Miata, which seems to be a very big topic, especially since the acronym for Miata is always the answer. So if you spell out Miata, that's what it gives you.
Yeah.
And I ended up with a Miata, and everyone's like, "Why'd you buy that?" Or like, "I didn't know you wanted one," or this or that, right? And kind of the tale of Miatas and everything, because when the Miata came out in 1990, people forget that it was so popular. Well, it actually came out in 89 for the 90 year. You know how it goes, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were so popular, dealerships were selling them for over MSRP. Yes.
Oh, okay.
And people were going crazy for these Miatas. Like they were paying up to $2,000-$3,000 back in 1990 for having one of these, because Mazda went back, looked at all the good that these British roadsters had, improve the reliability, because at that time MGs, Alphas weren't really British, but they were on the same concept of a convertible little sports car. Alphas, and all these other cars, they were fun, they were light, they were tossable, but they suffered reliability. Where this Japanese automaker, where the Japanese cars were known for reliability, came in, had a reasonably priced sports car that was light, nimble, and reliable. People wanted it, and it was a hoot to drive as well. A hoot. It was a hoot to drive as well, and they were flying off the shelves. And that's honestly why, in the year 1990, the first year is when Miata sold the most. When Mazda sold the most Miatas.
Wow.
So imagine in your first year of production, you sold the most cars.
That's impressive. However, I think Cybertruck is doing well in that front, except they're not. They're getting a lot of recalls and things are coming back. So.
Yeah, but keep in mind there was only a certain number of foundation or founder or whatever it's called models, which is the release model, the launch model. Yeah. And currently a lot of people have actually dropped their orders because when they decided to have the foundation model, they increased the price to over $1,000, $100,000. Okay. When the Tesla Cybertruck starts at $50,000 USD.
So they increased it by 50,000.
You get a whole bunch of options and then the big markup. So there was people that paid up to $200 and something thousand for the Cybertruck.
Yeah,
but that's crazy.
That's insane.
Yeah. So and then the Miata did good, and it's actually funny because there's the most 1990 Miatas on the road. A lot of people that had them kept them. A lot of people bought them. They thought they would be an investment, and they ended up being that way. Or a lot of people bought them and thrashed them because they were a cheap, fun Japanese sports car. Even though the first years of the Miata had crank issues, they were they were called the short nose, and they had like a crank issue, and the 1.6s were underpowered and this or that, right? So people loved them, and like through a point, Miatas got to the point where they were like $1,000 cars, right? I don't know if you remember this, but like back in 2014, 15, 16, back when I was in high school, you were able to pick up a Miata for about $1,000. Sure, they weren't in the best shape. They needed timing. They needed this. They may have rust, stuff like that, but they were readily available.
Yeah.
And fast forward to 2020, where we have, TikTok car girls and all this wanting Miatas, or, Miatas were still cheap, reliable, fun sports cars. So people were jumping for them and wanted them, right? Like, I'm not sure if you ever wanted a Miata.
No, to be honest, I never really liked Miatas. I like them modified. I don't like the base model of them. But it's not something I would ever own, to be honest.
Interesting.
Yeah. I like because of the style of what I own, like I like the Integra, the Prelude, like I like long and like almost like limousine-ish cars where they have a really long front end. Mm-hmm. And everything's long and sleek and it's naturally low. The Miata is just too small for me. I don't like small cars really. Like I like a long, low car.
The Miata is tiny, but I know that you drove my Miata and you did enjoy it.
It's fun, but I wouldn't own one.
Interesting.
Yeah. So maybe as like a museum piece or like just to take to the track, sure. But as like a daily or whatever, I wouldn't own one.
So that actually is a good point because I was the same way. Since we live in Canada, the car season is short, and if you don't have enough space for an additional car, the Miata isn't practical. It's maybe not the best daily, especially in the winter or the snow.
Yeah.
And your season is cut short, right? So I always told myself, hey, if I lived in Florida, I'd buy a Miata, but I would never buy one in Canada. And then fast forward, and I'm here with a Miata. But I'm in a different situation, different point in my life where I have the ability to have a place to store the car, and we're a YouTube channel. The Miata is a great YouTube car.
Yeah.
So there was reasoning behind owning a Miata, but and then now I own one in Canada, and I did what I said, where I was like, it'd be silly to store a car. You should drive it all year round. Where I stored my Miata for the winter. right? I had it in a storage unit, and it's kept the winter sleeping, right?
Yeah, that's
resting
another
away.
thing. Yeah, that's another thing with the Miata. It's like, it's because it's such a summer car. Like
It
it's
is.
a top down. Really feel the wind on your face kind of car. Feel the maneuverability. In Canada, you don't really get that when 6 out of 12 months is winter,
Yeah.
right? Like so, like I anytime because I don't have a lot of space. Anytime I pick my cars, I pick a car that if I don't get a second daily, I will be able to winter daily it. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
think you couldn't do that with the Miata.
There are people. So when I was in high school, I had a teacher. Shout out to Mr. Goblum. He had a NB2 or NB1 Miata. So not the NA, not with the pop-ups, the second generation. And he got it after his transmission blew up in his like Saturn.
Saturn.
And he was a very analytical guy, and he's like, for the money, for the power to weight, Miata is the best car. And he's like, the NB is the best because you get the 1.8, one this, blah blah blah. And he always talked it up, right? And he's like, a Miata is meant to be driven with a top down, and the Miata is my only car. And he
In the winter, top down.
yeah. So funnily enough, we're like, Mr. Goldblum, you're funny. And one day I went to school and it ended up being a snow day, right? And I went to Saint Jean de Brébeuf here in Woodbridge, and I was waiting for my mom to pick me up on the second floor because I was like, what, grade like 9 or 10 at that time. And me and one of my buddies were standing there, and we look outside, and it's like, oh, there's Mr. Goldblum going to his Miata, right? It's a snowstorm. He's going to his Miata. And we're like, yeah, he says he drives with the top down in the winter. Let's see. And the guy gets in, starts the car, middle of a snowstorm, top down, and drives
you're
away.
just gonna ruin the interior. Like it wouldn't even be about comfort. It would be about like you'll ruin everything inside the car just having.
Keep in mind, the Miata is kind of made in a way that if something gets a little wet, it's okay.
The leather,
right? There are cloth seats in some of them too.
Oh, okay.
So, well, leather wouldn't get ruined by water, but like puts the top down, drives away, and we're like,
that's insane.
Are you serious?
That's dedicated, but I don't think that's 90% or 95% of Miata
he definitely was like one of the few. And they do say that the Miata has very good like heating for the winter, which makes sense. Because if I forget to turn off the heat, even in the spring or in the fall in the Miata, and I have it like not even on the fan, just set it to heat, it gets hot in there.
Well, it's a small car. It doesn't have much to heat.
No, it doesn't. Exactly. So I can understand that he's able to drive top down and still feel warm because the warm air is blowing at him and stuff like that. But I was in utter shock. So if you're really dedicated, you can. Just I wouldn't. Even in the rain, I have my top up. Like I drive with my Miata top up sometimes, and I know people say blasphemy. How dare you, right? Because it's meant to be driven with a top down. But getting back to why you should and why I ended up buying one was, I like Miatas. Like I said, I always thought that, hey, if I live in Florida, California, a place like that where it's summer all year round, it's a great car because reliable, very fuel efficient because it's a 1.6 very light car. Like pushing the Miata is so easy. I do it myself, no problem. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Like up a hill, like I've pushed it into my driveway, into my garage by myself because it's light, right? Yeah. So a little 1.6 that makes 112 or 116 horsepower is, great, fuel efficient. The tank is small and stuff. So I was like, hey, it'd be a great daily if I lived in Florida. But by the time I got my license, 2016, I got something reliable. I got a good daily, stuff like that. And by the time I was like looking around for a second car, Miatas were, expensive, right? They were like, for a clean Miata, you were paying like $10K.
Oh yeah.
For one that needed no work or anything like that. Obviously.
Prices have gone up exponentially on cars nowadays. Now that you have, I don't know what exactly caused it, but during the pandemic, everyone really got bored and I noticed that everyone got into cars. And when we came back after the pandemic, every car was just overpriced so much. Like a GTR would have been an affordable dream, like an R34. Now you can't even look at one without losing money.
So the truth and the reality behind that is, number one was disposable income, right? When people were at home and they got their either, CERB checks or other things like that, they had a little bit more money in their pockets, right? Number two, with the move of COVID, a lot of jobs went remote or work from home.
Yeah.
So people were no longer commuting daily to work. So people looked at that and said, hey, now that I'm not driving every day, I can afford to buy a car that I've always wanted, right? My one vehicle could be my fun car. So a lot of people went out and started buying those cars that they had in their childhood, right? That's why the Golf R sold so well, because a lot of people, when they were young, they had a first generation Mark 1 like GTI.
Yeah.
And they're like, man, I miss that. I want it. And they went out and bought a brand new Golf R, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of people went out and bought the cars they had in their youth because they missed them. They had to get rid of them. They had a family. It's not practical. But now kids are grown up. I'm working from home. You know what? I'll buy that Integra again. I'll buy that S2000 or whatnot, right?
I bought an E36 during that time, so.
Yeah, so prices shot up. Disposable income, not having to need a reliable daily. They could kind of make do with something that they don't drive every day and stuff like that added to it. And I feel like because a lot of people like the skater scene as well has a big impact on the car community, because a lot of car guys are prior car like skater boys or BMXers. And if you look at like the mid 2000s, like 2010s, is when skateboarding and BMXing kind of had a resurgence. And now those kids grew up.
Yeah.
And there's a bigger population of them again, and they got back into cars. Because you look at the 90s, that's exactly how it was. That's why the early 2000s, the car scene, like Fast and Furious, blah, 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 those skater kids became car kids, right? And it was just a resurgence of it again, right?
Yeah.
Because like, there's a point where you have a crossover where it's like, oh, my dad was a skater, I'm not going to get into skating, right? But now it's like a different generation that your dad is, and like maybe your dad wasn't a skater, but you think skaters are cool and you get into it, right? There's a little bit there. So
I was a skater.
There you go.
So
right. You follow the trend.
As soon as I got my nice little, my first, I had the Z24, but later on I got a Prelude, and then when I didn't want to drive it, I would take my skateboard out of the trunk and skateboard everywhere.
Save on fuel.
And then eventually I just stopped with the skateboarding and just got super into cars.
Yeah. But yeah, prices went up, and I was like, you know what? Like I looked at other cars to buy. I was looking at AMGs, M's, and stuff like that. But I didn't end up going with anything because I had my super modified Jetta and all this. But then, I always saw Miatas, and I was like, maybe I'll buy one, maybe I'll this, maybe I'll that. But I'm very big on getting the right deal at the right time. And I would see these deals pop up, and I'd be like, it's not worth it, right? Like there'd be a nice one that's in really good condition, but has 300,000 kilometers. It's like, do I really want that? Like, do I want to settle for that and still pay like $8,000 for it?
That's crazy.
And then over the course of the summer, when I started at PA, I actually got my ex-girlfriend, Simone. She was working at Haggerty, and she let me know that she had a client selling a car, 2 Miatas, and if I would be interested, right? And I'm like, maybe. I'm looking to buy something. Maybe this could be the project car, or maybe this or that, right? So I ended up going after coming back from Vancouver to see these Miatas, and I went up with Mr. Alex Pona. And the intent was, and the story behind the Miata was that there was 2 Miatas, right? There was Norman, who was the owner of the green Miata, and there was his wife that was the owner of the red Miata, and he wanted to sell them both.
That's
so they
awesome.
Would stay together.
Couple, they had.
Yes.
That's so cute.
They both had Miatas. They bought them back in about 2010 or so.
Yeah.
And later in the mid 2010s, his wife got dementia and Alzheimer's. So she stopped driving her car.
Mm-hmm.
So that Miata started sitting. So by 2018, 2018, it wasn't being driven anymore. And then Norm, who had the green Miata, he did drive his, and he drove it, as much as he could. Sometimes in the winter, sometimes in the summer, stuff like that. But it was time where he had to sell them. He didn't have the money to upkeep them. He was taking care of his wife, but he wanted to see them go together, right?
Mm-hmm.
So from the PA side, Parts Avatar side, we thought, hey, this would be an amazing restoration project, right? So we went to go see these two Miatas with the intent of buying both. That's why I went with Pona, right? We would tow one back and Pona would drive the other one back home.
Yeah.
But we went and I started looking at it, and the red one looked great. It was low mileage. It needed a top. The paint was faded. The wheels were so old. The 2004 tires had an oil leak. The valve cover was leaking. There was a little leak from the clutch master cylinder. But overall, the interior was mint, just very dirty because the top had a hole in it. And it only had 120,000 kilometers for a 1992.
What?
So very low mileage.
Driven, yeah.
Barely driven.
Not even, wow.
And she was the third owner. The first one was it was leased, and then they bought it out. It was a lady, and then a doctor owned it, and then they bought it, right? So it was a 3-owner car, and barely driven, clearly.
Yeah.
But it was a 92 base, 1.6, non-LSD, no AC, power steering was the only option. And yeah, it was just complete bare bones, like crank windows and everything.
Yeah.
The other one, Norm's Miata, the green one, it was British Racing Green, which was a rare color.
Mm-hmm.
It was a 1.8 with an LSD, with AC and power windows.
Oh my. Okay.
So his was a higher end model, but his had 288,000 kilometers.
Oh, he drove his.
He drove his. It had Bondo on the quarters because it already had rust. One of the frame rails underneath was bent because his daughter took it through a cornfield.
That's fun.
The interior was the seats were torn. There was interior pieces missing. The key was stuck in the ignition because the ignition cylinder corroded or something. They
just left the key in there, and
so you would just take out the battery. And
man, that is extremely ghetto.
Yes.
Wow.
That's
actually not ghetto. That's very rural. That's a rural thing.
Oh yeah, it was up in Owen Sound,
Farmville
right?
kind of thing. Yeah.
So it was up in Owen Sound, and it had a few other little issues. It wasn't leaking anything. The engine was in good condition, but I think one of the springs was also broken. So suspension. It needed,
okay, yeah.
So and the top was completely torn in the back.
Oh.
Right, so needed top, needed body work, needed rust repair. It already had Bondo. The paint was clear coat failing and everything because it was repainted as well. So it was not in good nick compared to the red one, which just needed a little bit of work. So at that point, I called my one of my bosses and I FaceTimed him, showed him the cars, and we discussed it. And he's like, that green one needs a lot of work, like a lot of work. And especially having rust underneath or this or that, I don't think it's a good buy. And then the red one doesn't need a lot.
Yeah.
It's there's not going to be enough content. We'll get 2-3 videos out of it, like doing the valve cover, and doing the paint correction, right? Because the top, we don't sell tops, so it that doesn't really make sense for us, right? And then maybe 1 or 2 miscellaneous things, right?
We made a total of 5 videos off that Miata.
Yeah.
I think
there's gonna be a few more here and there because obviously just the allure of the Miata.
What kind of plans do you have for it?
Honestly, just resto mod, replace the front bumper on it, clean up a few other things inside, replace the radio, which we sell dash kits for the Miata.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So there's another part that we supply that we sell. So I have the Metra kit that we're going to install in a video coming very soon. And then just a single DIN CarPlay radio, which is pretty simple. We sell CarPlay units. We don't have a single DIN Apple CarPlay, but we have double DINs, which everyone goes for, right? So most people go
everyone for I'm an exception.
Yeah,
I love my single DIN JVC or
no
JVC?
screen. Yeah,
The JVC?
Pioneer.
Pioneer.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sony. Those single DIN. And then I just have like a phone,
Mount and
like
stuff like
a
that.
phone
Yeah.
mount. It's
We
so
s-
much
we
more.
sell those.
It's
We sell
so
those
much.
radios.
Oh, okay.
We
Yeah.
do sell those radios, but I wanted a singleton CarPlay because it was more unique.
Yeah.
And the Miata doesn't have a lot of space.
Single DIN CarPlay?
Yes, it's a very cool unit.
What is that? How is that? Is it one of those like
Nope.
TV like folding?
It's the size like that, and it's like a very long screen with CarPlay on it.
Interesting. Okay.
You'll see. That's why I went for it, because not a
Yeah.
lot of people know they exist, and I was like, you know what, this is a cool concept. Because in the Miata, where I still wanted to have my little dash cubby, this allowed me to keep it and have a full screen, and it not look out of place.
Yeah, that's annoying when you replace your radio and it takes away all of the storage components, and then you're like, oh, where do I put my sunglasses? Where do I put my phone? It's like, oh man.
So that's why I wanted to have kind of the best of both worlds, because like, also it's a 92 Miata. You don't want to have like a whole screen just there.
Oh, you don't want technology, like super excessive technology in like a classic car. It's not classic, but it's like, you could consider it's a JDM classic.
Right? It is. It's a 92, right?
Yeah.
So it's over 30 years old.
It just makes it look stupid when you put like double DIN and like big screens and like weird technology. Like one of the reasons I don't like Tesla is all of the technology.
All the big
there.
screens
it's so
and stuff.
Stupid looking. Anyway, we already made a whole video.
Back to buying that Miata. So I went to Norm and I was like, hey, the company isn't interested in buying these cars anymore because it doesn't make sense for content. But I personally would love to buy the red Miata if possible, because I'd be buying it with my own money as my own car. I know you want to sell them together. Would you be willing to split it? And he's like, well, you know what? It'll still end up on your YouTube channel. I'd love to see where this car goes.
Does he watch?
Yes, he watches. Yeah, he texts me when I post a video.
That's
so
awesome.
Norm, you're a real one. Thank you so much.
He liked the detailing video we made?
Yes, he was surprised I could save the paint.
Yeah. Well, me too. So
yeah. He said, sure, I'll sell it to you. So I ended up picking up the red Miata. We negotiated a bit on the price because I wasn't getting a 2-for-1 deal, right?
Yeah.
The idea was it was a great deal because the green one needed a lot.
Yeah.
And he knew it would be hard to sell just the green one.
So wait, did Pona not buy it?
No, Pona did not buy the green one.
Oh, I thought Pona and you both bought a Miata.
No, he didn't. He didn't have the space for it at the time. He didn't have a shop. But Pona thought about buying that green one consistently. He would text me and be like, does Norm still have the Miata? I'm like, he does. He's like, I don't know if I need it. I'll think about it, right?
Yeah.
So I bought the red one. Pona drove it all the way home on 2004 tires.
Oh my.
He drove 120 on the highway, which is a speed limit in some sections of the 400.
And it's such a small car. How does that do with wind resistance? Like, does it get smacked around a lot?
Oh yes, it does.
I had a friend who had a Honda Fit, I believe.
Yeah.
And every time we went on like the Skyway or anything, it would just be like bullied.
Yeah. So the Miata's like that. Drove it home and then got it licensed, insured up and stuff like that. So I got it on classic car insurance and all that fun stuff, and I've been slowly restoring it. So yeah, that's the story. I actually, when I bought the car, I only got one key with it. No, I got two keys with it. But one of the keys was supposed to be for the trunk or something, and it never fit because it had the updated Mazda logo, right?
Oh.
Which after a while I realized, hey, Norm has the updated Mazda logo on his Miata. And I messaged him. I'm like, hey, Norm, have you found that other key? He's like, no, I'm still looking for a blah, blah. Because I'm like, I think I have your other Miata key. And I think you have my other Miata key. So I sent him a picture. He sent me a picture. I'm like, yep. He had the two keys he thought were for his car. And I had the one key for my car and the other key for his car. So we ended up doing an exchange, and he gave me the keys and stuff like that, which is very cool.
Well, that's convenient.
Yeah, I met him up like halfway, and we exchanged and chatted about the Miatas and stuff.
I still only have one key for all my cars. It's irritating to try to get them.
So I have three keys for the Miata.
Oh,
three.
Mm.
So
one for the trunk?
One's a valet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
Wow.
still 3 keys.
Valet key for something that old.
Yeah,
Interesting.
crazy, right? It's
Yeah.
not chipped, so it's a little different.
Yeah.
So that was very, very cool. And then there were the green one stayed, and I was thinking about buying the green one as either a track car, drift car, or something like that. But I went to go pick up a new bumper because I couldn't save the bumper on our Miata with the paint correction.
Yeah.
So I went to Burlington to a guy named Neil, and he parts out Miatas and stuff. And that's a funny story in itself because he posted a blue bumper for sale, right? And it's like, it's squished, it needs paint work, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, so you know what? I'll get that one painted, then take mine off and sell mine, and then put the freshly painted one on over the winter. Because over the winter, it's cheaper to get stuff painted sometimes because shops like aren't as busy or stuff like that. So I was like, hey, great opportunity. So I went to Neil and messaged him about the blue bumper, was going to restore it and repaint it, and then negotiating on price. And I was like, hey, you know what? If it was red, I'd give you asking price. And he's like, I have a red one. Haven't even listed it. And I was like,
that's convenient.
Sweet. So I went, picked up this red bumper, and then I'm going to just throw it on and then sell my red bumper because my red bumper is straight, never repainted. Just the paint is bad on it.
Oh, it's bad.
Yeah.
We didn't even try to restore it because it just is unsavable. So.
I might give it a try before I sell it, but I didn't want to ruin it more. I'd rather just put on a fresh bumper. Call it a day. Yeah. Picked up new wheels for the Miata and just the radio, a few other small things, and then I think I'll go from there. Once she's all back together, I'll decide if I want to keep her or whatnot because she's low mileage and I drive my cars a lot. And realizing that this is a low mileage car and it's kind of preventing me from wanting to drive it a lot, might be a good idea to let her go and pick up something higher mileage. But we'll see. But it's funny because when I was picking up that bumper, I told Neil the story of the Miata and that other green one exists. And a couple of months later, Neil ended up going and he picked up that green Miata.
Oh, wow.
So
nice.
He's still debating. So he's kind of, I think he's picked it apart a little bit. And he said it's a little rustier than he expected. It has a few rust holes. Yeah. But it's still pretty good. So he's going to decide if he's going to restore her or if he's just going to part her out, which hopefully he decides to restore. But great motor with an LSD 1.8, very healthy, ran good. So regardless, the heart is going to be good and can be transplanted or the whole car will be saved, right? Nice. It is a British Racing Green car. So it is a rare car. That's why it's kind of worth saving. Yeah. But if it's too far gone, it's too far gone, right? He'll have to pull the carpet and everything to see how it looks underneath, but we'll see. So I had to let Alex Pona know that the green one is no longer for sale, so no Miata for him.
He's still texting every week. Hey, should I buy that?
It's been sold, buddy. It's been sold. So. Nice. Yeah, and that's the tale of the Miata. And honestly, the ownership has been wonderful. I've been driving and I had a dude in the middle of an intersection stop at night, get out of his car and like on the like opposing side. So I was driving this way and it was this way, got out of his car, waved at him. He's like, do the pop-ups. And I was like, oh, I was in shock and I pressed it and he's like, hell yeah. And got back in his car and zoomed away. And I was like, what the heck just happened?
That's the one thing that is really cool about Miatas. The pop-up headlights.
Yes.
Not many cars have that, so it is unique in that
pop
aspect.
Up and down headlights. Pop. However the song goes that Donut did. But yeah, it's a lot of. I honestly love because like I think my Jetta's pretty cool, but when I see kids see the Miata and I do the pop-ups, they're like, oh my god. And like all these like kids like love seeing the Miata and it just kind of joys my heart as well, seeing like little kids enjoy it. Yeah. And it's just a stock Miata, right? It's nothing special, but people see it or love it. Or I see people and say, oh, when I was younger, these were everywhere. Oh, I miss these, right? And it's like a nostalgic thing. But I think that goes hand in hand with any classic car because people are like, there's not many of them left. And it reminds them of their childhood. Yeah. So
anything 90s, even 2000 nowadays, because the cars that are coming out nowadays are just like nothing like they were. So
Yeah.
it's nostalgic seeing those 90s or 2000s cars.
Yeah, popping
it's nice
back
seeing
up.
them, yeah.
And seeing them, and the ownership's been interesting, and it's, I'd say, almost gotten more attention than the Jetta, which is hilarious. But girls love that car for some reason because they're like, "Oh my god, you're pop ups."
It's like how they used to love the little pink Beetles.
Yes.
The bugs. Everyone loves those bugs. Well, everyone loves a Miata because they're just so adorable and cute.
So, yeah, if you want attention, maybe a loud exhaust is not what you need. You just need a Miata. So
Miata and a small puppy.
Yes, and you'll get all...
And you'll be good.
Yeah, you'll get all the girlies. So, yeah, that's why you should buy a Miata. Not only is it a fun car, fuel efficient, reliable, and honestly cheap to insure as a classic car. They're very fun to drive, and they're a good extra car to have because low maintenance, cheap, and that's why the prices went up and they're up there. So, do I recommend buying a Miata? Heck yeah! If you're not super mechanical. Very cheap to maintain. Parts are very cheap, and a great fun car. It's not too fast that you'll get in too much trouble, but you can still speed in it if you want.
Yeah, it's not a tight engine base, so anything that really breaks, even if you're not mechanically inclined, you'll have an easy time figuring it out.
Oh yeah, and my Miata sat for 5 years untouched, and it just needed a few little things, right? So it shows you still can get a fun, reliable car for cheap and enjoy it, and you don't have to be super mechanical or anything, because even a mechanic, you take it, valve cover job is less than an hour job for a mechanic to do. So I recommend it, and yeah, that's my Miata story and why you should buy a Miata. So thank you so much for tuning in to episode 10 of the Parts and Pistons podcast, and we'll see you in the next one, where maybe we'll have another guest.
Could be you.
Could be you. It was Greg. It was Greg. He was a viewer and he came on. So we'll see who's next.
All right.
Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next one, Sparkies. Remember, Parts Avatar has got your back. So don't forget to subscribe to the Parts Avatar channel so you don't miss any of these exciting videos.